no longer have the opportunity. So, as I said previously, my name is Carla Vendetti. I'm with Barrett Planning Group. My colleague Jill Slankus is also in the room with us, and she is recording this conversation just for the purpose of note taking and our breakout at the end. So, Peter and Dylan and the Dotson and Flinker crew can see what we said eventually in the transcript. So, we get to take our time now. We had to rush through that presentation, so we get to the good part. But just as a start off, introductions would be great. Please say your name, which village you live in a couple of words, the most important aspect of Barnstable to preserve or improve in the coming decades. If you don't have your camera on, that's all right. And if you would still like to share, please do. Otherwise, we'll just bounce around. Ellen, would you like to go first? I see that you unmuted.
Oh, okay. I'm Ellen Nozzle. My husband Ken is here with me too. We're in Centerville. I think I'd like to see a few things be evident in our discussion. One, this may be somewhere in the documentation as to what the demographics are the respondents. I would not like to see a lot of percentage of people be non-residents in the respondents, because they won't have the same thing in mind as those of us who live here. I also feel as though what happens with the LPC is kind of going to inform what happens with housing initiatives. I may be wrong on that. But if that is the case, I think people need to be aware that one of the things that's underlying a lot of the other discussion points are change in zoning. So if you're one of those people, residents out there who indicated you'd like to protect neighborhoods, that's something you need to be aware of, that it's built upon a lot of other decisions that are done in town. So if you like residential zoning, that's something you need to be aware of. Do you want to comment, Ken?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is, again, the 2010 mission statement mentions about preserving the environment and community. So again, just to reiterate what my wife said, by removing or getting rid of zoning, and in particular, I don't know if that necessarily preserves the environment or the community. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was the examples of Cambridge and Greensboro in the presentation. I would think it would make more sense to have some kind of example of a town size example where, these kinds of plans were visioned and so forth. Comparing Barnstable to Greensboro or Cambridge, the size of those property, city limits, it just doesn't seem to correspond to the quaint little towns, quaint little villages that we experience here in Barnstable.
Excellent. Thank you for those. Who would like to go next with their introduction?
Can you, I don't know if I can be heard or if you
Yeah,
see.
go ahead, Dorit. Yes, I can see you.
I can only see the breakout one slide. Hi, I'm Dorit Kingsbury. I live in Osterville in the sort of Tower Hill area outside of town. We've lived there for 5 years. I'm always confused about whether we're considered residents or not, because I still work in California 4 months a year, but I consider myself a resident and really value the Cape Cod life. I don't know how to answer the exact question you gave, but I do know how to, I really resonate with what the earlier person just said, the couple. And I also wanted to mention, and that was particularly in terms of residents and neighborhood and all that. I'm very concerned about, we've listed these priorities as just presented, and I think many of us would agree with the priorities that are mentioned there. But the question is going to be, the trick of all this is really going to be, is how do you prioritize the response? Because you make one choice about one thing, and that's going to have an effect on the next thing. So for example, you can want to affect housing, but you have to ask yourself, how is that going to affect us creating neighborhoods? People are concerned about their neighborhood life. I personally the pumpkin festivals and things like that are nice, but to me, that does not create neighborhood life. What creates neighborhood life is people actually living next door, and not masses of people. That's just my personal preference. And I'm concerned because I'm seeing in my own neighborhood a great deal of Airbnbs and not that are changing all the time. They don't have the same relationship to the community. And that's being foisted upon us very quickly. So that's a big concern for someone like me in my neighborhood. So I just raised this question about how that response, even though the priorities say this is number one, you know, how do you get to answering number one? Might be you first have to do number 4.
Right. Thank you, Dora. I see, Felicia, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm Felicia Penn, native of Hyannis for a very long time. And yes, Dort, you know, if you live here and you consider yourself a resident, we do too. Okay. So you don't ever have to question that. The fact that you're getting your paycheck from California, good for you. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I'm the vice chair of the this current LCP committee, and I was also on the one that I was on the planning board when the 2010 plan was done. So I have a little bit of experience, although I do not know everything about this because we did not sit down and actually write the plan. As you know, there are consultants involved in doing that. There's a couple of things I just wanted to respond to here. First of all, I want to say that at a recent LCP committee meeting, there was some frustration of some of the members, and for good reason, that they hadn't heard anything about human services and taking care of the people who live in the town of Barnstable versus infrastructure and land use, which are the usual targets for a local comprehensive plan. There's always a section on human services, which there was in the 2010 plan, but it's usually at the end, which it was there too. And so some people on the committee didn't want that to be a byproduct or an afterthought. And it would just be interesting to hear what you guys think of that. Okay, I just wanted to throw that on the table, let you know that's kind of humming around in the heads of the people who are members of the LCP committee. I also wanted to say the visions that were presented from Greensboro and Cambridge, obviously they're huge cities compared to the town of Barnstable. I think they were just presented for style and what you want to see in the new LCP that comes out. Do you want one that's in your face and says, hey, this is where we aspire to be and this is where we are and we're going to do this, damn it, or whatever, you know, that kind of a thing? Or did you like the more passive way of doing it? And that's an important thing just for personality. It's just going to create the personality of the plan, I think, versus comparing sizes of communities. Ellen, your concerns about changing residential zoning are throughout the town in almost every village, I believe, and even in Hyannis, in downtown areas. So that's something that's out there too, and people are very fully aware of that. My overall thing about the plan, every single character and rules of engagement that came up, et cetera, and summarizing communication with people, you can never really nail an entire town because everything means something different to everybody else. For me, it means maintaining the community character. And that's a very broad statement, and it could be meaningless to everybody, and everybody could take it in their own way. But it's the character that attracted people here. Of course, I wasn't attracted here. I've just chosen to stay here. But it's not the new character that's necessarily happening to the case. For example, I'll be absolutely honest with you. I hate Route 132 and Route 28 and that whole industrial area of Hyannis. I can't stand it. I avoid it at all costs. I will drive across it and never on it if I can, okay? Because to me, it looks like Framingham and Route 9 in Natick and in all those areas, Worcester, and all those areas around the greater Boston area. And frankly, that's not why I choose to live on Cape Cod. It's not why people come here so that they can have their favorite stores, I don't think, although they love them and they patronize them more than native Cape Codders do, I'm sure. But so even within the village of Hyannis, there is such yin and yang. It's just
Right.
kind of horrifying. So to me, the character of the Cape has nothing to do with commercial big box stores. Okay.
All
It
right.
does have everything to do with why people are attracted here. And that's because of our stressless, easygoing living with a wonderful environment where if you don't like where you are, you could drive for 15, 20 minutes and just change your entire scenery and feel better about yourself. So to me,
Excellent.
that's important. And everything that comes out of this plan, if it supports all of that, works for me.
Thank you, Felicia. Moving back to Ken and Susan. I don't think we've heard from either of you yet.
My name's Ken Alsman. I live in Katuitt. We've been here for now we've actually been visitors for 30 years, and we moved here about 10 years ago. My background is in city planning. I worked in City of Mountain View for 28 years. We went through lots of comprehensive plans and all kinds of visions and goals and all those sorts of things. And we ended up with what we call Mountain View, and I don't like it anymore. We did a good job, but now the state has taken over zoning in California. And if you don't do exactly what they tell you to do, they will force you to build 30 units on land that you had zoned for 5 or 6. So it's gotten crazy back there. And I think all that's been said about the character and charm of this area, I couldn't agree with more. It is what makes us. What happens in planning is that we don't really have any kind of an end goal. We sort of say, oh, well, we'll keep reiterating this thing over time, and incrementally things will get worse and very few things get better. And I think I'm finding that to be, maybe it's just my advanced age, but I'm finding that to be a problem as I look around and sort of envision the future for this area of Barnstable. One of the things that scares the jabbers out of me are the plans for the new bridge. When I first read about it, it made sense. It said 4 lanes, fantastic. That's what we have now. It's safe. It needs to be safer. We can make it a little wider, a little more convenient, put better pedestrian access, etc. But what they talk about with 4 lanes is 4 lanes in each direction. The San Francisco Bay Bridge between Oakland and San Francisco is 5 lanes in each direction between 2 major metropolitan areas. What's going to happen when we fill up the bridge and widen this funnel to every other road in town? It's going to be monstrous, I think. I think there are other things that bother me that are sort of forewarning.
Right.
What Public Works does with respect to signing in residential neighborhoods. The goal is better pedestrian safety, etc. But the net result are these Eurochrome pedestrian signs and lights and flashing signals and all kinds of things that have nothing to do with our villages. So
Right.
those are the kinds of things that bother me, and I'll stop there. My list, unfortunately, is much longer than you have time for.
Well, hopefully we'll get to some more of them and we'll circle back to other points. Suzanne, if you could introduce yourself.
Are you talking me?
Susan, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I think I'm coming down with a cold.
No,
Am I not there?
you're there. I'm just worried about your cold.
Oh, okay. I'm Sue Rohrback, and I, excuse me, live in Centerville. I've lived in Barnstable since 1984. Brought my kids up here And I have served in the past on the planning board and the town council and the community preservation committee and a bunch of other things. I'm trying to try not to say too much because I know we need to move on to other things. I liked the fact that everybody in the survey thought that water quality was important, because I think that that is one of our most key things. I was struck by the fact that nobody mentioned anything about dealing with the effects of climate change. As I was thinking and looking at the examples from Cambridge and Greensboro, I thought to myself, well, a little phrase that would kind of put it all together, the whole thing about community character, which I agree is very key and can be interpreted in many, many ways. Was Barnstable a place that you'd like to live? And I think a lot of people that come here to visit do say that. They say, oh, I'd love to live here. I say that about a lot of places that I visit. Oh, wouldn't this be cool to live here? And then you realize that, of course, that when you live there, you have to deal with real life. And it's not the same as visiting. So I guess that my sort of vision is a little different from some of the things that have been articulated. Barnstable is certainly different than it was when I moved here. Very different. But times change, communities change. What we have to do is move forward, or what I think we have to do is move forward to attain the kinds of goals that we come up with, and still retain the community character and the water quality and all that sort of thing. It's going to be incumbent upon the town and everybody in the town to, what do I want to say? To understand that in order to meet the kinds of goals that we're talking about, which include having people be able to afford to live here, and then we may have to change a little bit. But we've changed since 1984, and I think we're still a pretty great place, and the villages still have their character, and we do have 132. But boy, I would miss those stores, I have to say.
Very fair. All right. So Jackie, I see that you're also on here without your camera on. If you'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead and unmute. I'm going to advance to the next slide while you do so.
Hi everyone, I'm Jackie, pronouns are she, her. I am in Centerville. I'm 29 years old, born and raised on the Cape. I had to move back about 3 years ago, and very privileged to be able to live with my family, and which kind of brings to one of my kind of concerns about and concerns and hope for Cape Cod is that, and Barnstable in particular, is to, that we create a sustainable year-round community that prioritizes the health and well-being of year-round Cape Codders, and which would mean prioritizing that people have their basic needs met. I see a lot of prioritizing seasonal economy, and I understand that, but I have so many friends here who have to camp out during the summer because people get kicked out of their lease in May to let tourists stay. I have friends that are, living paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet. And again, I'm very privileged that I don't have to worry about rent right now. But a lot of people do. And so to be able to have a community that is sustainable, that is also attractive and pretty. We want to maintain, how beautiful Cape is. But I would hope that moving forward, that we really invest in the people here. Yeah, I'll just end it there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So I think that we went over a little bit on time. So I'm going to get on to the actual visioning because I think we covered a lot of community values in our introductions. We talked about housing, sustainability, climate change, transportation infrastructure. We covered a lot of it and we don't have too much time today. So these will of course be up. And if you want to add anything to these parts of the engagement process, you can shoot me an email directly. I'll make sure to mention that at the end. But to move on, this is again the 2010 Barnstable LCP vision. Just to kick off our discussion, and if you could use the hand raise feature for this part, it would be great. Does the 2010 vision sound generally right? And does it inspire you? I know we talked about Cambridge and Greensboro a little bit, but going back to 2010, how does this make you feel? What does it evoke?
What is the hand raise feature?
Okay, so my apologies. I believe if
It's in reactions.
yeah, since I'm a co-host, I can't
you
find
just-
it.
If you just hover over reactions, it'll show up there and you just click on the bar that says raise your hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Felicia.
Sorry
Go ahead, Felicia.
Yeah, I was going to say this is boring. The vision.
All
I
right.
always thought it was, and I still think it is. It really doesn't say. It's very nice. It's a good cumulative once you look at all the comprehensive other parts of it. It does that, but it's just kind of blah, blah, blah. So I kind of
Agree.
prefer Greensboro's sassiness.
Thanks, Felicia. Sue, what about you?
I totally agree. I think it's very boring and dull, and you want to stop reading it halfway through. And it's not
Very fair. Ken, do you have any thoughts about this one? You're muted. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't mind it so much. I think it portrays a character of the community that I really think is worth preserving. And
All right. All right. So what has changed since 2010 that needs to be addressed through the new vision statement?
I'd like to comment because some other people did. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but what's changed is technology, big time.
Okay.
And that includes the application for short-term rentals, Airbnbs, that kind of thing, how it affects our neighborhoods, blah, 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 all of that. But it also affects possible higher wage jobs and sustainable economy, which Jackie talked about. I've always really been a fan for having major broadband last mile stuff in town. And I've met with the higher up several times on that and really gotten nowhere. So I think technology in its applications, good and bad, needs to be addressed somewhere.
Other thoughts on what's changed?
Did I raise my
Dora,
hand?
go ahead.
I think I raised it. I'm not sure.
You advanced to the top of my screen.
Okay. So two comments. One, I actually agree that this is a boring statement, but I also agree with Ken that this is actually a very good statement. And so what I would be doing with this statement next is breaking it out. I would say 7 diverse yet interconnected villages. What does that mean? Because one of the big fears I have is that we're going to treat it all as one. We talk about this as a town, but I'm sorry, it's a bunch of separate places that all have very, very separate things going on. And I think that's part of the challenge of the preservation piece. And also, I think that in preserving the history and having this sense of stewardship is really, really important now. But that has to be in the context of other big concerns like water and environment and climate. And will we all be under 4 feet of water in a few years? We don't know, but we can't exactly plan for that in our 10-year vision, I guess, alone anyway, as a separate universe. But I really want to be able to see, and I think what has changed is this again, I'm back to this priority thing because I really want this to be something that makes sense to people. And I may not be right, but I think the point is worth considering that to Ken's point, you can create 8 lanes coming and going in Cape Cod, but you have to really think about what is the fallout from that. What will happen to neighborhoods, to traffic, to quality of life, to affordability. I mean, I don't think people were thinking when Airbnbs became so much more popular that it would raise the cost of housing so much. So it tried to fix one thing, but at a huge price. And it has affected more than one thing. I'm not all against Airbnbs. I just think we're not thinking it through carefully enough yet. So that's what I think has changed, is that reaching beyond on this technology question is the impacts are coming much more quickly, and we need to be more able and more facile able to respond to those kinds of impacts that we didn't anticipate. I hope this helps.
Right.
I don't know.
Thank you, Dora.
Lowering my hand.
Do any other folks want to build on that, or do they agree, disagree? Ellen, I see that you unmuted.
Oh, yeah, I was trying to raise my hand, but anyway, I've been involved over the years a few times in writing what might have been called mission statements. So whether that's synonymous with the word vision, I don't know. They're usually fairly short like this, 2 or 3 sentences, and try to put every possible element into that statement. They're not necessarily pretty or fun or exciting, but they give you a launch pad to break out those different concepts and address them, hopefully in punchier bullet points that come out of the vision statement. So as a statement, it's textbook. It's not charismatic, but it does a good job.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing at this time so everyone can see each other. And I have some other questions just to follow up. What do you want Barnstable to be like in 10 to 20 years? I don't want to harp on the past here, right? Because we know that this can be boring. It's not as prescriptive because, like you said, we want to build it out as villages or even other sub bullets. But what do you see for the future?
I don't have a complete answer here, but I have a thought or two. Should I go ahead?
All right. 1 second. Ken just raised his hand.
Okay,
so I'm
go
going to
ahead.
call on Ken first, and then we'll get back to you.
And I think I forgot what the question was. So in any event, I think that one aspect that we used to do a fairly good job of when I was doing my job was how things are designed. You mentioned, for instance, the industrial area on 28 in Hyannis. A huge amount of that has just to do with horrible public urban design. It is just a mess there. And by making what's there better, by planting trees, by making the road make some sense, by not increasing the width of it, but making it more comfortable and enjoyable, would go a long way of making that a better place as a part of Barnstable. I've been doing a little work with the Twin Brooks stuff, and what the Cape Cod Commission has sort of agreed to, I think, is horrendous, in the sense, not in just I think housing might work there, but there's no connection to the rest of the community. One entrance drive through a parking lot into a major residential area. No protection for the surrounding open space. No connection across the creek into downtown Hyannis. Anybody living there has to drive somewhere. They can't just walk into downtown. So it's those kinds of thoughts in terms what I call urban design that I think could go a long way to help Hyannis in particular. For Cotuit, I think the urban design here is pretty damn good, but it is what it's supposed to be in my mind. But Hyannis certainly needs a lot of work.
I personally think that the boat launch entrance is a little bit dangerous, but that's just me when it comes to design. Go ahead, Dorit. What were you going to say previously?
Well, I completely resonate with what Ken just said. And maybe what I also want to say is overly simplistic, and I apologize for that. But one thing I have really experienced just in 5 years living in Osterville, and I can walk into town. So, and I like the fact that I'm in a residential area. I don't feel like I'm in the town, the downtown part, but I can walk to it 0.8 miles away. But what's happened is there's more, sorry for the real estate and the flooring companies and all the rest, but I don't understand why there are like 8 real estate offices as my downtown. Why there is a flooring company why isn't there a little pop-in restaurant, a little pop-in cafe, and I don't understand. I don't do urban planning. I'm a landscape designer, so sorry. But I do feel like I want reasons to come into town and say, oh, let's stop here. And this is this cute little place. And there's the little gallery. And these are the things that to me are the character of Osterville. Now in Hyannis, it's a completely different thing. And I also think in Marston's Mills, where you have the area where you have the Stop and Shop, the hardware, the CVS, and a lot of small, nails and all the rest that you can do. That's a place to create some residential density that I don't see. I mean, I'm just looking for ways that how can you sort of do a balancing act, but please, I don't want more construction and real estate offices opening up and taking away these little precious spaces that would give the town, maintain the character of the town. Done.
Right. Jackie, I see your hands up. Go ahead, Jackie.
Totally agree with you there of a little bit less realty offices. I think, thinking about like 20 years into the future, I would love to see more of more access to transportation, transportation options on the Cape. If we could have easier access to Boston or to anywhere else so people could still live here but work elsewhere and have an easy commute. Education as well. I really think in Barnstable, if there could be some sort of option, either 4Cs or another school coming in that has dorms, so we can have students live here and that can contribute to a year-round economy. I just think that would be super helpful in helping people develop in their careers and providing a less drastic seasonal economy, and less of a dip. And also mixed income housing, and not just in Hyannis, Centerville, Osterville, Cotuit, all the villages, access to, having that accessibility to mixed income housing. Yes, I think that's it, what I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to pose one more question and then we can get to the other two who have their hands up. What challenging decisions do you see the community facing in the coming decades? So when we look ahead at 10 to 20 years in the future, we're looking at what we want, but what are also some of the trade-offs or the difficult topics of conversation that might arise? I see Dora actually, and then Ellen.
I didn't mean to put my hand up. Sorry.
Okay, then go ahead, Ellen.
I'm kind of building off of what Ken mentioned initially, urban planning, and sometimes it does happen in arrears, the way it happens, catch-up planning. But I think when we're talking about housing accessibility and the Twin Brooks being an isolated community, where I agree that focus and money and development and energy should be put into putting housing where people work and where they shop. An example of this is what they've done in Centerville on Route 28 in one of those shopping plazas, and they put dwelling units above the strip mall. And I understand they're going to do something similar to that at Cape Cod Mall. In my opinion, that's the best use of the energy. You're not changing a footprint. You're not impacting the environment. You're putting places for people to live and work all in the same community and shop. And it can be done in our villages because Centerville's not Hyannis. So I think that that's a very important thing. That's a win-win all around.
Thank you, Ellen. Stu, go ahead. You're still muted. I'm so sorry.
I was listening so hard that I forgot what I was going to say. But challenges. I think the housing situation is certainly going to be one of those, because I think that we're going to have to make some tough decisions about how we move forward and how the villages are going to be affected by the need for more housing. I have to say that I'm a housing person, and I don't think of myself as a hardcore, rigid housing person. But I do think that our villages are going to have to accept some more multifamily or affordable housing. But I also think that that can be woven together quite well. And I do agree that the big development in Hyannis that everybody's so all upset about is too big. So I do agree on that. The other thing that I think is going to be difficult is going to be in the next 20 years, 40 years, is dealing with the effects of climate change. Those are going to, again, require some decisions that are going to be really difficult about what we allow to be built and what we allow that is built to let go or to reinforce or whatever. That's going to be really difficult. And I just want to mention two things. Felicia talked about at one of our recent meetings, we talked about human services, the need to focus on that. And I think that's important. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that somebody said that the new bridges were going to be 4 lanes in each direction. And I don't think that's correct. I think what I just looked it up, and what I was reading it was confusing, but it sounds like they're going to be 2 lanes in each direction with 2 bridges next to each other, each one with 2 lanes going in a single direction. So.
Okay. Jackie, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just, Susan kind of covered it. Well, I was gonna say just the environment is gonna be the biggest, one of the biggest challenges that we have, especially in terms of development. We don't really have much land that we should continue to build on, quite honestly. There's a lot that we could, reuse, repurpose and whatnot and redesign. But certainly think that Mother Nature herself is going to be our biggest challenge.
Thank you. So just to build on all of that, I wanted to pose the question, are there any topics in particular that you want the vision statement to cover? So we've talked a lot about housing, economic development, urban design, and even climate change. Do we want the vision statement to cover those directly or even include a small subsection, or would you rather that be like a build out later through bullet points?
Could you repeat your
back
summary?
To that.
Repeat your summary, Carly, again.
Yeah. So far we've talked about housing, economic development, climate change, urban design. And I wanted to know if you wanted to highlight any of these topics or themes directly in the vision statement.
I think you should just add community character to that and you pretty much have it covered.
Would you like those to be directly in the vision statement, or do you want to see a build out? I think Dorrit mentioned earlier the possibility of having this like more broad approach and then building it out through subsections or subvisions. I see Dorrit, you raised your hand.
Yes, what you just said, I would say, to have a statement that you then, carefully flush out so that it has some of the elements of what was it, Greensboro or whatever. But the other thing, this might not be so popular either, but what I have seen over my lifetime is that developers are trying to make a great living, and developers have a lot of power and a lot of political connections. And I wish that our vision statement would clearly say that we represent the people, not just the developers. And that's tricky, but I think that would be an important piece. Done.
Excellent.
And
Thank
down.
you. Ellen, are you raising your hand, or is your husband?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to expand on that, that's why I think it's important with the 1,500 respondents, again, going back to what my wife brought up, that we should know how many developers per se or whatever, builders or whatever, answered that question here. We should have a breakdown of how many people, how many 1,500 are they, are actual year-long residents, how many are not. I mean, so that way we know where the wind is blowing here, where things are coming from. That was my 2 cents.
Thank
Can
you.
I
We have a
just-
couple minutes left.
Can I just
Go ahead,
really
Dora.
quickly just to that? I just want to say, I would ask and hope that you'd be careful in thinking that you have to be a full-time resident to be a real resident. I just don't
Oh, no.
think that's true. So
I-
just want to be careful with that because it is a clear divide.
Yeah.
In some sense.
You know
Okay.
what? The only thing, and you're absolutely right, and I didn't mean to insult you by any means.
I'm one of
we've been-
many.
we've been, again, we've been vacationing here for our whole lives when our kids were little kids, and we've moved up here about 12 years ago now that we own the house here, and we retired from Connecticut. So, yeah, obviously we're full-time residents, and I know there are, but for a good amount of those years, we owned the house and we were still living in Connecticut as our primary residence. So I understand, and what my thing is and my concern are, you'd hate to see Barnstable turn into, I know it's a vacation destination. Obviously, I took advantage of that, but we also don't want it to go to the extreme of what Ken was talking about with congestion and bridges and so forth.
Yes.
And people that have no connection to living here own houses and dictate policy and again, and sit back and just make all this revenue, kick people out of for the rental season and so forth, so they have to go out and find a place to live. That's what we don't want. At least that's what I don't want.
Right.
But sorry, I didn't get.
No, it's all right.
On
It's
board.
all right. Felicia and Jackie, really quick, and then we'll synthesize what we've
I'll
heard
be
so
really
far.
quick. You asked about the climate and coastal resiliency thing is very important. I did a map that showed that with just 2.5 to 3 feet of sea level rise, Ocean Street from Snows Creek, which is JFK Memorial, all the way down to Calmus is going to be underwater. Now that's our beaches in Hyannis. I mean, that's big stuff for Hyannis. So the only water we're going to have access to is going to be toward the west end of town, which is, near Hyannisport and C Street Beach, maybe because they have that breakwater out there. There's no planning in this town right now for that. I think everybody's relying on the Cape Cod Commission. So this town needs to plan for that, and they need to ban anything new being built there, or if it's being built, it has to be up on stilts and blah, blah, blah. I don't see any of that going on in town. And very quickly, I want to thank Dora and other people here for saying that you're concerned that the town's not being proactive enough, and you're very concerned at the power that developers have, because you're absolutely right here, and we need to change that. You need to level it out so everybody's on the same dance floor. So thank you for that.
Excellent. And then Jackie.
Yeah, just really quickly, I just wanted to touch on the survey responses, and just wondering if there's a way that the planning group is able to provide a bit of transparency in the responses, like not specifics. I don't want to release personal information, but I think it would be helpful if that could be possible.
Yeah, Kyle, can you speak to that really quickly?
Yeah, so that the survey demographic breakdown is actually available on our website, and I'm happy to send it out to this group after this meeting. But yeah, we have a breakdown of the survey respondents compared to the actual demographics of the town according to the census. So that is available.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. And then Jill, I think, has been working on the synthesis of what we've heard so far. She's been taking diligent notes. Jill, how would you describe, this conversation so far? And I just want to maybe ground truth it with the folks to make sure we're representing it once we get back to the big group.
Yes, thank you. So everybody, you can let me know if I'm on track here, and we can reword it as needed or add things. So I have, so we want to, in a few words as possible, the big ideas that the vision should have. We're looking for powerful, inspiring ideas that can steer Barnstable toward its best possible future. So we're aiming for about 5 words or short phrases that we can all agree on. I have housing for all, planning for climate change, developing policies to guide urban design and connectivity, continuing to cultivate community character, and I think I was going to add preservation. Yay, nay, missing, cross anything out?
What do we think, folks? We have 2 more minutes before we regroup with the big group. Go ahead, Ken. Sorry.
I think it's very important to add some sense of caution and carefulness and secondary impacts like Dorit was talking about. I think those are the things that, good intents lead to some really bad outcomes. And, oh, we need sidewalks, yes, but if that means we take out trees and we take out this and we, put in more signs, it doesn't work for me.
Yes, so I think you're right. You guys hit upon that. I think I'll add something about considering the impacts on
excellent
the future of the town.
Yeah.
Okay,
The interrelated impacts.
great, thank you.
Yeah, that's real good.
I like
I also want to
interrelated.
echo something that Jackie said about sustainable year-round economic growth. I'm not sure if you had that in there or not. So really, really important.
Can you please say that again?
Sustainable year-round, possibly more higher education opportunities here, year-round growth. Just,
Economic growth. Yeah.
economics, yeah.
Thank you.
And I would only
Not
add,
tourism growth, not seasonal.
I wouldn't mind it mentioning a little more of the touchy-feely, just that it's a beautiful, wondrous place to be. I mean, maybe we don't need to be saying that, but I think what our experience of Cape Cod is, we want to keep. And
Thank you.
And Sue, do you have?
And our wish that all of our citizens have sustainable lives, that be healthy and be able to earn a living wage, and that be cared for. That we care about everybody.
I love this. With 10 seconds left to go, we're doing good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, folks. You've been a great group. Thank you again. If you have any questions or further comments, you could reach me at carly@barrettplanningllc.com. I'll also be.
Bye.
I guess
Are we done?
Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
Our group was a sprint to the end and somebody got cut off, which I always feel bad about in these Zoom meetings. So sorry about that, Raquel. So what we're going to do now is share some of what we all talked about in our groups and see how much commonality or difference there is amongst them. Are any of the facilitators feeling like well prepared to do a report out right now?
I am, Dylan, because
Excellent.
we wrote it down on the slides.
Excellent.
If you don't mind me.
Could you fix the Zoom so that we can see everybody who's here? I'd love to be able to see who everybody.
Yeah, so if you go and that's controlled on your end. If you go in the upper right corner of your screen, at least on my screen.
Oh, okay. Now it just appeared. It wasn't there. Okay, thank you.
So this is group number 2. We sort of have really good discussion and then tried to list the priorities. And of course, when you list them, you lose a lot of the nuance that people talk about. So we have more in the notes, but Obviously, a lot of these reflect what we've been talked about, but really with a focus on people as the sort of purpose of the planning process. And so whether it's, protecting the environment as the basis of an economy and quality of life that serves the population, enhancing social services, we talked a lot about the need for that, and then public transportation as sort of being fundamental to quality of life for all different populations. And then an interesting conversation about the importance of really building on historic resources, and more than just talking about we need to protect our quaintness and charm of Cape Cod, but really trying to understand the utility of that and how, specifically those resources impact economy, quality of life, and so on, and really working intentionally to protect those resources. We talked about an economy that needs to serve the people in Barnstable, is particularly allowing people who work in that economy to be able to live there. That was so important. We wrote it twice. And then including underrepresented voices in the process, which we just sort of started talking about what that means in terms of people of color, indigenous populations, and so on. But obviously there's a lot to talk about there. And then we talked about sort of the values that underlie these priorities, which, as we discussed, is sort of the flip side of this is what we want to do, and the values sort of represent why we want to do it. So build systems, serving the community systems and the natural systems. So really thinking about what kind of infrastructure we need, not just to make traffic flow better, but really to look at everything through the perspective of what enhances the life of the community and protects the environment. And to really focus again on the balance between people and the environment, to focus on the interconnectedness of people and the environment, not separate parts of this plan, but really integrated parts of it. Making decisions based on long-term sustainability, even though that adds a lot of complexity and cost, perhaps, to the planning process as well as the implementation. And then to include all communities in planning just as a value, that being fundamental to making a good plan and implementing a good plan. And then we talked about what flows from that is the value of focusing on small local businesses, encouraging young people and families, and local creators. And then we started to talk about a little bit what the focus of the vision is, and I think for most in our group, probably some combination of all of these things, but it was mentioned that sustainability really needs to be the touchstone for the plan. Even it was obviously written as part of the 2010 plan, but now is a good opportunity to look again as what does that mean in terms of the economy, in terms of the environment, in terms of the social structure and support systems in the community. And then obviously building resilience in the face of climate change has become much more important in the last 13 years. Does that capture everything from our group? I know it doesn't capture everything, but more or less.
Excellent job, Peter.
All right. Back to you.
I think I'll go next. I didn't follow my own directions and write things down on the slide. So my report out's a little messier than that. So we had a very interesting conversation. I think in terms of the priorities that I heard, water quality came out very strongly as a priority. Protecting open space, preserving open space, protecting the environment in general also was mentioned. Somebody in the conversation said that basically the full left side of that slide that showed the key themes were really the most important things. And those were basically all about environmental protection, I think, as well as protection of existing character of villages. Another topic that we talked a lot about was housing, the need for housing for all types of people, basically. Housing for older adults, housing for young families, making sure that there's housing so that there are opportunities for people who work in the town to live in the town so that your economy can continue to survive and thrive. A priority that came up was the need to be a green community, by which I think people were meant, responding to climate change, mitigating climate change through things like green energy and recycling and solar panels and EV charging stations. So it's similar to the idea of sustainability that was in the last master plan, but I think getting more specific about what the town can be doing on an individual and on a community basis to sort of reduce your environmental footprint. And then we also talked about as a priority, the need for redevelopment versus development. So redeveloping existing built areas as opposed to developing in undeveloped areas. The values that seem to underlie those things were, care for the environment, care for other species, and so forth. Protection or maintenance of human health, providing opportunities for everybody, and then caring for other people, which came up towards the end of the conversation, particularly around the sense of a lack of safety in downtown Hyannis, and how that needed to be addressed to care for the people who are making other people feel safe, and also making sure that people can feel safe in downtown Hyannis. In terms of the vision, when we talked about the vision, we talked a lot about redevelopment versus development. And so there's strong support for preserving villages. And then the idea of redeveloping areas along your more major corridors, and specifically kind of transforming those into more walkable, mixed use, I suppose, village center-like places. So somebody talked about having housing above stores, having, making it easier to walk around and so forth, and cited Mashpee Commons as a potential model for that. All right, that's my summary. I'm going to call on Carly.
Hi, Dylan. I'll do the report out. Carly did a
Okay.
great job facilitating our group. Okay, so for the community priorities and community values, some things that people just want to make sure was included, and I think they were, but I have under the is anything missing? Climate change, human services, community character, and transportation infrastructure came to mind as things to make sure we're keeping in mind. Looking ahead for the coming decades, our group was interested in neighborhood life, residents living next to each other, and how that dynamic changes with Airbnbs and short-term rentals, which led to a conversation that was kind of woven throughout. Our discussion was feeling strongly that the vision should somehow help guide the town forward in a way that kind of is able to think through impacts of things that maybe aren't anticipated from past experiences, such as how the dynamic might change with a decision of short-term rentals or a new bridge or technology, how that affects different characteristics of the town. They also, a high priority is human services and taking care of the people that live in Barnstable. And then under the community vision, it was really interesting. I think one reaction was it's boring, and the other, and the same person, often the same people might have agreed with the other, is that it does describe the character of a community that is worth preserving. So maybe getting, just revamping it, getting more detailed, thinking through some of the major future changes and what the impacts to the town are, so the town can be ready to respond to the impacts. What has changed since 2010 that the new vision should address, and that's where technology came up. It also affects higher wage jobs in a good way, and the economy. So trying to think ahead toward what the next 10 or 20 years will bring and what different aspects of community that will affect. In terms of what the group would like Barnstable to be like in 10 or 20 years, for the environment, dealing with the effects of climate change are going to lead to some very difficult decisions about what to let go or what to reinforce, and the acknowledgement of very, the community needing to make some very difficult decisions came up under other topics as well. Sort of a trade-off of priorities and different pressing issues. Also, it came in terms of development. There's not much land to build upon. Looking into redevelopment was expressed of interest. More access to transportation, more options on the Cape, easier access to Boston so people could still live in Barnstable but work elsewhere. Need to address human services. There was a desire to have some kind of school or college that would bring students to the Cape and allow them to live and work there after. Mixed income housing in not only Hyannis, but all the villages. Housing decisions on how the town moves forward and how villages are going to be effective with the need for more housing. And they wish the vision statement would say that the town, represents the people and is enveloped around the interests of their, the residents. Principles or values that could be included in the vision: better overall urban design, street trees, planning for connection between residential areas, open space to downtown Hyannis. They thought Cotuit urban design was pretty good. What would the vision need to say to inspire you? So we kind of summarized, the synthesizes that housing for all, planning for climate change, developing policies to guide urban design and connectivity, continuing to cultivate community character and preservation, consider the interrelated impacts of decisions, sustainable year-round education opportunities and economic growth. And the group really values their beautiful, wonderful community and their wish for that all citizens have sustainable and healthy lives. That is all.
Thanks, Jill. Alexis, I have to keep it as brief as possible because we're getting close to the end of our time together.
So I was actually with Peter. I think Jeff's group.
Jeff's group, sorry.
All right, and I can be very quick and not to give short shrift to my group because we were awesome. We had great conversations and covered a lot of the things that have been mentioned already. So I will keep it very high level. One of the things we encouraged everyone to do was think of some keywords. So in terms of the top priorities, water quality, environmental resources, infrastructure, and that's both technological and hard infrastructure, roads, bridges, as well as the community character at each village level. Some of the key words that our group discussed was a future that is connected, sustainable, clean, balanced, preservation, stewardship, focus on future generations, and a plan that is proactive. And then lastly, I will also say some of the key themes that the group would like to see reflected in not only the vision, but the plan overall is a concept of balance, balancing resources, balancing the need to focus on villages as well as townwide direction. How do we prioritize all of these issues? Because they're all important and we want to do them all, but how do we prioritize? How do we involve performance metrics so that we know what we've achieved and what we've achieved success, and really continuing with this concept of transparency in government. And that is my 30-second spiel. Of course, there was a lot more discussed than that.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, so I wanted to thank you all for coming today. The next step for this is we're going to have basically the same meeting over again tomorrow in person. So you all don't need to come to that, but you're welcome to if you want to do it all over again. And after that, we're going to basically summarize the input that we heard and bring that to the steering committee for this project. I see several of the members of that group here today, and go over it with them and start to flesh out what the vision should be. So we'll be primarily working with them to do that. So again, thank you for your time. And I see one person raise their hand. Ken, do you want to say something?
Listening to this, it's frightening. There is a gigantic bag of ideas, thoughts, missions, whatever. To me, a vision statement needs to be succinct. It needs to be clear, and it needs to be encouraging. And I just see what has been said has just been so much it's impossible to cover it all, and everything will lead to something else worse happening. So I hate to be such a pessimist about this, but I've done this for too long. Sorry.
All right. Well, on that sad note.
Sorry.
Hopefully we can pull it all together and make it into something that's concise and inspiring and cogent. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Don't feel bad, Ken. I said it was superfluous, the vision statement.
Well, until we see people of color on this Zoom call or in the audience, I don't think anything will be really equitable.
All right. Thank you all. See how it goes. Bye-bye.